All right, here for the daily, we're going to preview FC Porto versus Manchester United in the Europa League. Here with Tom. How's it going?
Yeah, lovely. Thank you. How are you?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, doing well, considering. Yeah,
Yes.
considering this is the penultimate game of Eric Ten Hag's reign. Maybe, possibly. Who knows?
Yeah, that's the feeling I've got right now, to be fair. And especially with the games we've got coming up as well. Like, Porto is difficult. Obviously, Villa is even more difficult. So,
yeah.
Yikes.
Yikes, indeed. Yes. Well, I guess we'll do more on Eric Ten Hag and his potential demise at a later date if it comes around to it. Competing narratives in the mainstream media today. Ornstein saying there's no way Southgate's under consideration, and then a piece in the Times saying Southgate is the number one pick. So don't know where people are getting their information from. Normally I'd go with Orny as a sensible source here. So there we go. Hopefully he's right. Like anyone but Southgate. Love of God.
Yeah,
please,
I mean,
no.
It's just because you almost, in this day and age, you can't bring in a manager who has such bad will before he even gets through the door. You see it, Steve Cooper at Leicester as well. Like, he's not really done anything wrong so far. Like, Leicester haven't been particularly great, but the fact that he's a former Forest guy, like, the fans hate him immediately. And when you kind of come in with that load on you immediately, like, and United fans, like exactly what you kind of just said, like, they have their reservations. They won't take to him. Therefore, 2 or 3 bad results and people will get on his back. What we need more than anything is a positive upturn. Someone who
absolutely
a little bit like the Ollie type of effect. Someone who's going to get the fans on side immediately. And I mean, everyone's thinking of the same man right now. But
yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And Southgate's problem is twofold. One, the style of play, and would it translate to something different for United? England was very prosaic under him, despite having all these talented players. And two, the CV, right? He's done nothing in football to suggest he is suddenly going to turn Manchester United into a top team again. Absolutely nothing. International football is almost a different sport than the Premier League. So anyway, not to harp on about Southgate too much. We'll get to that problem if we ever come to it. That would be fun, wouldn't it? It'd make for content, at least. Porto. The funny thing is, I have in my mind always that the Dragão is a kind of new stadium, and it is, but it's 25 years old. Right?
wow.
And I was just looking it up today. I was like, bloody hell. I seem to remember Porto playing at the old place, and 20 years old, I should say. 2004, it was inaugurated.
I guess the Euros they held there in 2004 was built for
exactly.
That,
It was done for that. Lionel Messi made his debut at the stadium. I didn't know that one either. Yeah. Nice. There you go. It's I've never actually been to the Dragão. I've seen it from the I've been to Porto. It's very kind of prominent, like up on the hill on the north side of the river. And so anyway, 50,000 people is going to be a great atmosphere as always. Porto, kind of interesting team at the moment. Obviously, Vitor Bruno has taken over. He was a long-time assistant manager, so after 6 or 7 years, an assistant manager there. They've had some key departures in terms of players, a few coming in we can talk about, and obviously AVB is the new president. I was looking at his election as well. He won his election with 80-something% of the vote. And Porto's an interesting one because they're sort of a public company, but partly fan-owned. And anyway, so the fans voted him in a Banana Republic-style election. Very good. Well done, AVB.
Yeah, I think the president before that had been in charge for a long, long time
30 years or something insane. Yeah.
Yeah, AVB's career has been interesting, hasn't it?
Hasn't it just? Yeah.
Peak years at Porto where he was incredible and looked like the next big thing. Obviously failed at Chelsea, had a very weird time at Tottenham. And then didn't he do the Dakar Rally after that? Is that where he went after that?
And he wasn't ambitions. he wasn't even a former player or anything. He was like maybe he played amateur level, and then he was an analyst and was writing these scouting reports and got the eye of some people. Yeah, very, very odd career overall. Anyway, president of Porto now. In terms of the team, from what I can see, they're going to set up a bit like they did under Conceição. It's 4-2-3-1, pretty flexible, but they've changed a lot of the players, especially in the forward areas. So Taremi, obviously, Iranian international, got to Inter. I think I'm right in saying it was Inter. He went to... there was some talk about him potentially being a target for United at one point. I mean, it was a free transfer. He's in 30 now, so anyway, he's got himself a big move. They brought in Omadorian from Atletico, who nearly joined Chelsea and then failed his medical.
Yeah, so, he's been on fire as well.
He always looked like a good player. I mean, you can kind of see why Chelsea were interested, but some kind of knee problem. He left Atletico for about half, so he's got to rebuild his career, basically. He didn't get the big move to the Premier Leagues. He's effectively dropped down a level.
Yeah, he's a weird one, I guess, when you see such a talent kind of go to the Portuguese league, because they also kind of get into this position, which I think Gyökeres has at Sporting, where he scored numerous goals last season, and he started the season in similar vein, scoring in the Champions League as well. And they kind of potentially get stuck. And this is kind of the problem with a lot of Portuguese teams, and sometimes when you come across like Turkish teams too, like because they're on big wages and because they're going to fetch such a big fee, sometimes it's actually difficult to get them out of there. Like especially with Gyökeres, he's been linked to a lot of Premier League clubs recently, but because of his age and the fact that he was at Brighton as well, like it's a bit of a risk to buy someone for such a big fee. So you can get, which I think Amorodian is going to kind of maybe become that, and especially with his knee problem, like it doesn't kind of matter how good he ends up being at Porto, he might just kind of get stuck there. And he's already started like he's too good for the league a little bit, and Galeno's started really, really well for them as well. So they have twin threat essentially. Like they don't always play together, but like they can. But obviously Amorodian's been injured in the start of the season, so Galeno's kind of had been the kind of the goal getter. But yeah, they've got danger in attack especially, and they've started the season well as well. Like six out of 7 wins, lost to Sporting. And,
they did, yeah.
And last season,
and
I guess,
was
potentially one of, and to Bodo Glimt. So obviously United play later in the Europa League, which is a weird one. And I guess that also kind of speaks to the level of the Portuguese league, because you do have obviously the big three, which is that kind of weird thing where only 5 teams have ever won the Portuguese league. So the top 3, every time they play another team in the league, they should beat them really. And it's kind of you decide how good the other team is by how good they play against the other one of the top 3. And I guess that big game this season, they've lost it. So and also they've lost in the Europa League. So I guess that kind of speaks to maybe where they are as a team, but they are a little bit in transition after Conceição being there for so long.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. And they seem to have focused a little bit on younger players. They've brought in some players from the B team, and in order to kind of refresh the squad. And they finished 3rd in the Primera League last season. So, yes.
Which is kind of bottom, really.
Yeah, effectively. Bottom of the mini league. Yeah. Sporting Benfica and then Porto, and so yes, it speaks to this is not the golden age Mourinho era where they were winning the league and the first UEFA Cup as it was called then, and Champions League and knee slides and winning at Old Trafford, cheating to win at Old Trafford. Never going to forgive that, Lino. So yeah, long beyond the golden age. And trying to rebuild, I guess, under a new president, new manager, different squad makeup and all of that. But still a threat on their own patch. And the fact that they're not in the Champions League, they're in the Europa League will speak to their dropping standards. But tactically, looks like high press, flexible forwards who move, can shift our defenders around, 2 fullbacks who push really high up the pitch, as they have in the Conceição for years and years. I mean, tactically looks like the setup to screw us over, doesn't it? I mean, it's almost a perfect tactical setup to face a Ten Hag side.
Yeah, and they're very relational, I think, when in the way they play. Like they play like not without positions, but their players have a lot of freedom to kind of go wherever. It's a lot more relational than it is positional. And I think, yeah, I mean, also kind of just from a really, really basic level, like the atmosphere is going to be absolutely insane. Playing like a team like United, every team in the Europa League, as we saw with Twente, and their fans going absolutely nuts at Old Trafford, their players going absolutely nuts at Old Trafford for a draw, for getting a goal and holding on. All the teams that we play in this Europa League are going to be massively up for it, and that's something that we have to match. Obviously, Ericsson spoke about it, and that's kind of caused a bit of hoo-ha in the press and stuff. But he's completely right, obviously. And if the players don't turn up 100%, you think it's funny that Denny McCarthy. I don't know if you saw the Denny McCarthy quotes.
I did, yeah.
Yesterday. Obviously, the former was at United, obviously last season, but obviously the former Porto player under Mourinho as well, won the Champions League. Was speaking
scored against us.
Yeah, scored against us.
Great header.
That's who. No, he leapt so high for that goal. Was it Gary Neville or was it Phil? Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, he leapt very, very high. But obviously he was speaking about how United players just don't train properly, like don't train to the intensity, don't train to that level that you expect of a big team every day, apart from Dalot and Bruno, and obviously he was speaking to the Portuguese press, and maybe he was pulling them out, but that doesn't. It's not like in my head I was like, well, Bruno and Dalot are the only two, because that kind of does speak. Like Dalot has kind of taken on the Ronaldo type of mentality after becoming his mate by all accounts. And Bruno, obviously, I feel like would just be an absolute winch bag at training in all the best ways as well. Just absolutely just wanted to win so much, almost Roy Keane-esque, really.
Yeah. Well, look, we need those leaders.
Yeah, and therefore those two will be massively up for it, I think. Obviously, going back to Portugal, and hopefully those two can maybe inspire everyone around them to be massively up for this, because if they're not, we could get trampled on, and it could be embarrassing, because they're going to be. They've got some really good attacking players, as we've spoken about, and they're going to be massively, massively up for it. It's going to be really intense night. And if we turn up half-hearted like we did against Twente, who were a really bad team, to be honest, we're going to we could get rolled over. I don't expect us to, because I kind of think that the atmosphere will rise. We will rise to it. But if we go 1-0 down or 2-0 down, this could be like really bad, and then potentially with Villa on Sunday, it could be curtains for Ten Hag. Like Porto are a threat. They're not amazing, but they are a threat.
Well, I think that's a fair summary. As for United, I mean, it's very easy to be reductive, isn't it? And say, hey, it's all about the players. They need to be up for it, and the kind of Benny McCarthy thing. They need to train hard, and it needs to translate onto the pitch. That's the hygiene factor there. It's the minimum. Of course, they need to be motivated and need to work hard. The system is the other thing that really matters. And we saw it again on Sunday, 2 players pressing, everyone dropping back, massive donut in midfield. I don't know how, and I don't mean this to be dismissive, some 21-year-old kid watching clips on Y-Scout can figure this out. And Eric Ten Hag, one of the top coaches in world football, cannot. Right?
And all his assistants.
And his assistants. It's deliberate. They are doing this for a reason, because they think it means they can get the ball in high areas and transition quickly. The problem is United are conceding goals. I mean, and don't score enough. Don't score enough goals. Again, sorry, simplistic. Don't score enough goals to make up for the fact that we concede goals by letting pressure onto us. From minute 1, we let Spurs take the initiative. We conceded possession and position field tilt to Spurs. It was an absolute disaster, like one of the worst, without worry about being hyperbolic, one of the worst 45 minutes I've seen a Manchester United team play. And I'm in my 40s, so I've seen a lot of games, right? Yeah. One of the worst, absolutely dreadful. So we can't have that. There needs to be a sort, of course, a physical and mental reaction to that, but there's a systemic problem as well. Are we going to again come out with chaos ball, because that will leave Porto creating 20-something chances? Are they young, very talented, technical, flexible forwards going to score goals? Yeah, fuck yeah, they are.
Yeah,
and I do not see how chaos ball wins this game for United.
No, and I think the Portuguese league, a little bit like the South American leagues, is also a league where a lot of players run with the ball, and a lot of players are good at running with the ball. So one of the reasons why Enzo Fernandez looked so good when he was at Benfica is because he was great at breaking with the ball. And Porto are that they're exactly the same type of team, and obviously we struggle when teams run at us, because gaps just massively open up. We've conceded the same goal about 50 times under Ten Hag, it feels like. The goal at 20 was exactly the same type of goal as the first goal against Tottenham. It's just a guy running through, and no one, and they're just being like the guy being Moses, and everyone just moving to the side.
The Red Sea parting, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
and obviously Ugarte was supposed to be brought in to fix that problem, but one man can't do that. It's a systemic issue.
Can't cover enough ground.
And therefore, in this type of game, if we don't be a little bit more conservative, or at least just change the tactics and change the system a little bit, it'll just be the same old. And that's the worst thing about this. Like you say, the first half against Tottenham is potentially the worst that you've ever seen. I agree. But also, I feel like there's 3 or 4 performances under Ten Hag where you could potentially say, oh, that was as bad. Because
of course
that's how bad we've been under Ten Hag at times, and this is why we're at this point where I personally just can't be bothered with it anymore.
Well, I'm not quite at that point because I'm addicted, and
not with obviously United, but as in with Ten Hag. I just don't want him anymore, and I am kind of just at my end of that tether, and
to be fair, you said that at the end of last season as well, so you're not knee-jerking. We've had 122 games under Ten Hag. We've had quite a lot of evidence about what he plays. So the 3 systems we've typically seen under Ten Hag, most of all, it's this one where he's looking for a quick transition. So lead gaps into midfield, drop back into a mid-block when the high press doesn't work, and it doesn't work either systemically or with the personnel, right? So that's the one we've seen most of all. At the end of last season, we saw a mid-block drop back into a 4-4-2 and defending, and it looked much more effective because although it's harder to transition there, we were solid. We weren't conceding goals, and that was Arsenal, Newcastle, Brighton, and the cup final. And then very, very rarely we've seen a possession-oriented display where we're trying to keep the ball. So a half against Crystal Palace recently, bits of the Brighton game this season. But just very, very rarely. And it seems to me, and I'm just making this up, but it seems to me that is the style that the new Ineos team, so Wilcox, Ashworth, and the rest of them are saying, hey, we'd like this to be the club style. And that's not what Ten Hag wants to do. Ten Hag wants chaos ball and transitions. I'm making that up. I'm reading between the lines, but I suspect that is the case. So what are we going to get in this game, which is really bloody crucial, by the way? If we lose this one, and we're having to go to Fenerbahce trying to get some, Fenerbahce, 99 points last season, Mourinho's Fred, all the rest of it. Yeah. Like trying to get something, end up with 1 point after 3 games. It's almost impossible not to get qualified from this, or you have to be so bad. But there's a scenario in which United are there if we end up losing this game.
Yeah, we previewed it. When we obviously did the preview for the 20 game, and we said this is the easiest of our next 3 fixtures. But if we don't win this game, we really could be in trouble here. And we're obviously messed up the 20 game, and now we're at Porto away, not needing to win or needing a draw, but like you say, like we go to Fenerbahce away, which is going to be absolutely insane atmosphere, and they're not a bad team at all. Like they're obviously in the Europa League, and they didn't win the league last year, but that's because Galatasaray was so good. Like Fenerbahce away is a nightmare, especially for our players that I think can rise to the levels, but also when things are going bad, they get in their own heads massively, and they just cannot face adversity and cannot turn away from adversity. So if they face adversity at Porto tomorrow or at Fenerbahce, then you just can't see it going well. And then we have got an easy run in for the last 5 games of the group, but
it's true.
It's Man United.
Always an easy running when it comes to United these days.
Exactly. Like we saw it last season when we were playing some Copenhagen, and none of those games are probably easier than that. Like Bodo Glimt have obviously beaten Porto. We've got to play.
Yeah.
PAOK, you think maybe we should be beaten. Rangers have just got a new manager. Maybe they'll be better, but it'll be just peak United if we didn't get through this group. And obviously it's the Europa League. It's a bit Mickey Mouse. Yeah. But it's kind of it's the level we're at right now, and it's
quite important. Yeah,
it really is, and especially for Champions League qualification as well, because as we spoke about, like there aren't any teams in this apart from potentially Tottenham, and you think, oh, I wouldn't want to get them. We should be winning this competition, and it's also our best route into Champions League football because we're not getting.
I think that's probably true. It doesn't look like it. Yeah. Quickly before we go, in terms of the team, I guess the big questions are like, what's the makeup of the back four? I suspect it's the same, right? It's Anana, Mazraoui, De Ligt, Martinez, and Dalot in midfield. Igate's got to play in this one.
Yeah.
Mainu is training. Apparently he's fit, which is a mega bonus. And obviously Bruno was never going to be suspended for this one, but he's always going to play if he's fit. I know there's been a lot of online chatter about him. I'm still of the opinion that you can't replace 200 and something chance creation per season. And then the front three, I mean, it's Xerxes again, who looks very nice, helps United retain possession, but can't score goals. Rashford, who had those 3 goals in 2 games. We're hoping he'd be back, and then was stuck out really, really, really wide against Twente, and then barely got the ball against Spurs. I know it's not popular in the online world, and I'll have comments below if I mention Rashford, because he has become the barometer for online hate at the moment. But we need to play to a system that can get the only player in this squad who's ever got more than 30 goals in a season, right? You want a system where given the best chance, and then you go, okay, well, he failed, if that's the case. And Garnacho, who runs, but was quite ineffective against Tottenham. Not entirely his fault at all, or in fact, not his fault at all. Ran harder than anyone else, but really wasn't able to get into the positions that would be damaging. So is it that, or do we go with a bit more control with Ahmad and drop one of Rashford and Garnacho?
That is it all kind of depends. And I think you pick your midfield too based on what you want to do. Well, you should. Like if you play Agate, and I think you probably play the flyers, that you play Garnacho and Rashford, because I guess you're looking for transition, you're looking to win the ball and move. Whereas obviously if you're going to go for some control, like, I mean, sure, you're not going to play someone like Eriksen in this game, but you obviously go for a controller beside Mainu if Mainu is fit enough to start. Like, but the problem is, I feel with Ten Hag, like there doesn't always appear to be that logic when we see certain games. I remember it was the Liverpool game, wasn't it, where Ahmad didn't start in that game, and you think we really need to keep the ball against Liverpool because they're just going to be able to transition back onto us all the time. And we just kept turning the ball over, and Garnacho had a shocker that day and just kept losing it every single time. And you think there are logical pieces that you would put into this puzzle, but I feel like it doesn't always come from the logic isn't always there from Ten Hag. I don't really understand what's going on most of the time.
Yeah, agree. All right, we'll leave it there. United need to win. Ten Hag needs a win desperately. I know we shouldn't judge a manager based on 1 or 2 games. In fact, that's a ridiculous way to make a managerial decision, although the new management seems to have done that based on an FA Cup win. So that may be unfair since there was a deep review. Anyway, yes, everyone needs to win. The pressure will be just massively on the team, club, and especially the manager if that does not happen. Thanks a lot, everyone. If you can hit the subscribe button, that obviously helps us try and build this channel, and leave us a comment. Try not to make it too personal. I've had a few.
Wow.
All right, bye now.